Hey guys, welcome back. Today we're going to discuss what exactly is the problem with mindset training. Now, I did not receive a question about this, but I do get emails from time to time about it. I do get DMs about it that all revolve around the theme of, hey Mark, you're really not a fan of mindset training. What gives? How could you possibly be against this thing that we've all kind of implicitly accepted is the right way to get the mindset that you want? And it's not that I think that there's a problem with mindset training necessarily, but just the way that people use it. People simply don't use it in the right way. So we're going to talk about, I think, what mindset training is, what it misses, and how to use it in the right way in this video. And I think it all comes down to the problem, something that I mentioned before, quite a bit on this channel, is that we're clearly in some kind of mental health epidemic. We can cite a bunch of stats. A lot of them really don't indicate anything, like SSRIs are on the rise, or the use of psychiatric medication is on the rise. But we could just be prescribing more SSRIs. So, that's really not a good indication. But I think the two indications that indicate something, it really is going on. There is some kind of mental health epidemic. The media may be playing it up to some degree, but it's not. But I still think it's there. And those two issues are obesity and suicide, right? Those are two statistics that you simply can't fake. Like we have been killing ourselves a lot more in the past 25 years, but especially the past 10 to 15 years, and obesity rates have been on the rise. It's just how we are managing the pain of neurosis right now in our culture as we medicate ourselves with food. Yet at the same time, while we are clearly in a mental health epidemic, yet at the same time, we have never been talking about mental health more. I mean, how many self-help books, self-development books can you find? Everybody's talking about it. You can go on online and just find any therapist for any little issue you may have, any life coach, whatever. You can get help. It's out there. Everybody's talking about mental health. Seems like every other month is some mental health awareness month, and NFL players are going to wear socks that indicate it's mental health awareness month. Yet we're killing ourselves and we're eating ourselves to death. I think that's the same thing with dating advice. I cannot believe the amount of dating advice, and pretty good dating advice from what I can tell. There's a lot of, looking back, there's a lot of dating advice. I'm thinking, man, when I was single, this would have been useful. Yet we're also in the midst of MGTOW and incels, and that issue being a thing. So at the same time, guys are so fed up with women. They are, guys of mating age are distancing themselves from women, not accepting women into their lives at all. At the same time, we have all this great information on dating, and I think it all stems from the same issue, which is none of our solutions really get at the root of what our issues are, what our mental health issues are. I think there's lots of great dating advice. Does it really address the fundamental issue that a young, let's say 22-year-old man is going through in his struggles with women? And I think that's where mindset comes in, right? I think it's this great tool that we can use to improve our psychology, and it definitely can. And I do some mindset things, maybe we'll talk about them later. But I think it's all about how you use it, in the context that you use it. I mean, so what is mindset training? It's difficult to find a definition. I wrote something down here just to help myself. I would describe it as simply an amalgam of various cognitive exercises that are designed to change your psychology, specifically from the top down, from the conscious mind to the unconscious mind. They are psychological techniques you can use to change your psychology from your ego, right? From what you perceive to be the problem in the moment. Now, this can take on a bunch of forms. The most, really popular ones are setting goals, and the three goals that we set typically are around health, wealth, and women or spouse or dating, right? I want to be this certain kind of healthy. I want to lift this much weight. I want to weigh this much. I want to have a waist that's this size. I want to make this much money, and I want to date this kind of woman. I want to marry this kind of woman. I want to date 3 women of this kind. Or I want to get to the place where I can date 3 women at the same time, whatever it is. And routines are a big part of this. I have my daily routine, and I need to stick with it. Wake up at 5 a.m., go on a 10-mile run, do work for 3 hours, do my homework, do my OChem homework, whatever it is. This is what I want to do. Also, it involves ignoring emotions. So if you feel an emotion that's irrational or not helpful to you, whether it's anxiety, let's say you're in a business meeting, or maybe it's jealousy. Mindset training is about controlling what is in your conscious mind and just saying, I am not going to deal with that emotion now because it is not helpful. And of course, the one that I talk about a lot is changing thoughts. Let's say you have an unhelpful thought. What you do is you just ignore the thought. Similar to how we treat emotions. And this has changed from the top down. And, there's no real theory behind this. It's not like you say, well, I'm going to change my thought, and then eventually whatever my psychological issue is that gave rise to the thought will eventually diminish. That's all implied. And that is implied in cognitive behavioral therapy, which is a kind of mindset training, or I really should say that mindset training is a kind of cognitive behavioral therapy, right? That this isn't just a colloquial thing. This is the kind of therapy intervention that is prescribed most prevalently by the mental health industry, by the therapeutic, by the APA. So it's like, yeah, we may have a psychological issue that gives rise to the jealousy, but if we just stick with this routine, if we just stick with our goals, if we just stick with our affirmations, right? That's another great form of mindset training. If we just stick with these things, the mental health issue, to whatever extent that it is an issue, it will simply take care of itself. Now, this can all be helpful. I think setting goals can be really helpful for your psychology. It's just to give you something to shoot for. However, mindset training, well, again, it can be helpful. I need to say that. We just got to admit that it misses something that's fundamental. Right? And really, when it comes down to mindset training, how you use it, it's all about the context in which you use it. A great example, I think, is with branding. I think branding is great. I'm not a business expert, I'm not a business consultant, but I think if you want to be a successful business, it's really important to focus on your branding, what you are. Get a great logo that signifies to other people what your company is all about. But it's not that helpful if you don't have a customer, if you don't even know what problem you're trying to solve with the customer, if you don't really have a service or product figured out that's going to solve this problem in this customer. And the way that a lot of people use mindset training is like, you have this business, you don't have any customers, you don't even know what you're doing. You may have some idea what you're doing, and you're spending all this money, working on branding. You're hiring this like really expensive logo designer, but you don't even know what you're doing. And that's what I think how mindset training is often misused. And to make it worse, the psychology community, the self-help community, whether it's CBT or mindset training guys, however you want to describe it, they have no idea how to do the psychological equivalent of figuring out what your customer is, figuring out what your service is. I'm just reminded of something back when I was in graduate school. They have those posters or signs over a urinal. I was in the bathroom one time, taking a piss, and I see the sign over the urinal, and it was a advertisement to figure out your personal brand. It was figuring out how you want to communicate who you are to other people, which I think is helpful. A way to think about your identity, to think about communication, to think about ultimately spirituality, because ultimately what spirituality is connection with others. And if you don't have a focal point, which I think is a great way to think of a brand, if you don't have a focal point through which you're going to connect with other people, then you're really not going to connect with other people, right? But nowhere, and look, maybe you go to this workshop, you go to this class, whatever it is, nowhere in this advertisement for this workshop or class do they talk about who you are. Do they talk about being more self-aware? It's all just communicating not who you are so much, but who you want to be to other people. And that's the problem with mindset training and the way it's used right now. So I think in order to get in the right mindset, to use mindset training, you need three things. You need to really nail down three things in your life before I think mindset training or cognitive behavioral therapy or changing your thoughts or setting a goal that you will be able to achieve. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, how do you even set a goal without knowing who you are, without doing some deeper work first? I mean, usually what I find when people try to set goals without knowing who they are, without setting goals in the right context, is often the goal is a compensation for deeper insecurities, typically. So a guy will say, oh, I want to have sex with this many women, or I want to have this many girlfriends. Like, do you really want that? Or are you just trying to run away from the pain of your insecurity, the insecurity that really needs to be managed before you get into mindset training or any kind of cognitive technique that people will typically give you in therapy. So here are the three things I think you need before you can even think about using any sort of mindset training technique. The first one is you need to be able to talk with parents. Talk with your parents. You need to feel comfortable around your parents. Like if it's time to visit them for Thanksgiving, you're like, oh, it's going to be difficult, and oh, I'm going to have a couple more beers to make it through, whatever my father's political tirades. If you feel that tension being around your parents, then you're clearly not ready for any kind of mindset training. Now, this isn't about having a good relationship with your parents. I don't care about that. What this is about ultimately is, can you communicate who you are around your parents? Right? What ultimately makes you uncomfortable around other people? Is it because they have issues? Is it because they're frustrating? No. I mean, that can bother you a little bit, but ultimately, if you're uncomfortable around somebody else, it's because you're afraid of letting them see who you are. You are hiding from them. What makes it uncomfortable is you constantly do this calculation of, I want to say this one thing. Oh, is that the right thing to say in this context? Oh, I better not say it. And this push-pull of, I want to let people know who I am. I also don't want to cause any conflict, and that's what makes it uncomfortable. And you think it's your father's political tirades. While I get that's annoying, that's not ultimately why you need 3 extra beers when you're home for Thanksgiving. So that's the first thing you absolutely need in your back pocket before you do any kind of mindset training, is a sense of comfort around your parents. Does this mean you're going to have the best relationship? No. It's not about that. It's about connecting with them. It's about being comfortable sharing who you are with your parents. The other thing I think that you need is you need to have been in a relationship, and the relationship needs to have ended, and you need to understand how your psychology, how any problem with that relationship, which is why it ended, right? It wouldn't have ended if there wasn't a problem. You need to understand how your psychology contributed, how problems with you contributed to everything in that relationship. Now, it doesn't have to be a relationship. It could just be any big failure. It could be a big business failure. Same thing. You have to understand how it's not a business failure. Right? We don't have business problems. We don't have relationship problems. We don't have girlfriend problems, boyfriend problems. What we have are personal problems. We have psychological problems that manifest in these things outside of us, and we think, oh, it's the business. Oh, I just wasn't in the market in the right time. Oh, it's problem with my girlfriend. She has some issues. And you're right, she probably had some issues. It doesn't matter. You need to see how her issues, every single one of her issues, you got to get really nuanced. Go through the relationship with a fine-tooth comb and think how every single one of what you think are her issues, really it's the issues in the relationship, how they are a reflection of you and your mismanaged emotions. Right? That's the key. And a lot of people, maybe they break up with their girlfriend or boyfriend, their boyfriend or girlfriend dumps them, and they kind of take responsibility, but they kind of don't. They're holding on to this resentment, and then you go in and try to set a goal, and you think it's something that you really want. It's not what you want. It's partly what you want, but also what the goal is trying to do is to compensate for this resentment issue that you have about this ex-girlfriend, ex-boyfriend. So I think that's the second thing you need before you start any mindset training. And the third thing that you definitely need, there is no way around this, is some kind of confession. Now, this isn't necessarily a religious confession, although it can be that. You know, Jung famously notes how, most of his clients, when he was practicing, most of them, I think maybe only 10% of them were Catholic, when there were plenty of Catholics around. He had more Jewish clients than Catholic. I mean, this is Switzerland, right? I mean, it's just, there's way more Catholics than Jews, but way more of his clients are Jews. It's like, why don't Catholics have any psychological issues, or not to the same extent that a Protestant or a Jew would have? Well, Catholics have this thing called confession that is inherently therapeutic, and this is partly what you do, well, what you're supposed to do when you go and see a psychologist. As part of it is confession, and it's not just like, oh, confession of my sins, or here's where I err, just talking through every instance of your life, creating a story structure, creating a narrative for your life, and talking about it with somebody. Yeah, talking about the things that you're ashamed of, talking about the things that maybe you don't want your parents to see, which is ultimately what makes Thanksgiving more uncomfortable. Talking through every single one of your issues, every good thing you did, every bad thing you did, just to lay it out there. Just to take this tension of bottling these things up out of your life, so you can go on to change your thoughts, be more likely to change your thoughts when you want to change them, be more likely when you feel a, quote, irrational emotion, right? It's not irrational. It feels irrational at the time. It's definitely telling you something. But when you feel, let's say, anxiety at a business meeting, you are more likely to avoid that anxiety in the moment in a healthy way. Ultimately, suppress the anxiety so you can come back to it later and not repress it. Now, when you make a goal, after you've gone through a delineated confession, it's not to make up for any shame you feel about, keeping things in, keeping things bottled up. You can be at least more certain that the goal is a true reflection of what you want and not just what you think you want to make up for any perceived shortcomings you may have that ultimately is based on you not doing this ultimately spiritual thing of being honest with somebody else about who you are. So those are the three things that you need, and I look out what's going on in self-help and mindset, and people are not talking about these fundamental issues. They're actually using mindset training, cognitive techniques to cover up the issues from not handling deeper emotional problems. This isn't just about psychology. This isn't just about mindset training, though, or cognitive behavioral therapy. I think this is true in any endeavor. Right? How do you tell the newbies in any sport, any industry, whether it's investing or getting into like real estate investing or I noticed this, I have a gymnastics background. So I noticed this in gymnastics. What do the newbies, and this is definitely, I was guilty of myself, right? What do the newbies want? They want a quick fix. They want a technique. So in gymnastics, it's like, oh, I want to do this cool move. Or if it's investing, it's, oh, what stocks do I buy? Or crypto. What crypto do I buy? What's the next hot coin to get? Same thing with women. It's like, oh, what do I say? Okay, she texted me this. What do I text her back? I think it's probably the same thing in, something that's more popular now, like jiu-jitsu. Probably all the newbies that go in the first day or so and they want to know this cool submission. Like they saw this cool submission on the UFC or they saw it on YouTube and they want to learn it. But what do they really need to know? Jiu-jitsu, like with gymnastics, you need balance, right? It's probably about body position. with investing. I don't know anything about investing, but I'm sure there's like some fundamental issue there. And it's the same thing with psychology. What the newbies want is some quick fix to remove the pain that they feel in the moment. And that's never what you need. And that's never what is ultimately going to get you what you want. And it's often going to hurt you, right? Like if in gymnastics, if you're trying a move that requires a level of body position and core strength and muscle memory that you have not built up yet, you're going to hurt yourself. Right? That's what's going to happen. And it's the same thing with mindset training, same thing with cognitive behavioral psychology. You want to learn this technique to get your mindset right, and ultimately it's going to hurt you because it is ultimately going to be a compensation for not managing your deeper issues. And this is what we work on here, specifically how to manage our deeper issues. I mean, we have a process for doing exactly that. And, there's therapy out there that manages your deeper issues. There's psychodynamic, Jungian therapy, which I'm a big fan of. I think that can be really helpful. But ultimately, while it does touch on fundamental issues, it doesn't really do it in a precise way. It's more vague than anything else. And while you will get a lot of benefit for doing, let's say, Jungian therapy, there is no precise way to manage your unconscious issues. But that is what we do here. We do therapy. We have a course that teaches you how to do it. And by the way, I was just thinking about this because, we have a daughter now, and my wife bought this course online for how to feed your daughter properly. What foods to introduce, how to introduce them, like how to introduce your baby, in a sense, to eating solid foods. She got a course online for, I don't know, $50 or $100, wasn't that much. And while the course is helpful, and it's been helpful, she could have found all this information online if she just Googled it. Right? Now, that would have taken a lot of time. And the way that the course lays it out, it just tells you exactly what to do. So it's like, look, just introduce these foods at this time. She could have Googled all this information, but it was still, I think, a good use of money, whether it's $50 or $100 or $200. But all the information was somewhere. What we do here, like the information or the kind of therapy that we do, or the information in the course that teaches you how to go through this process of therapy of managing these deeper emotional issues, you can't Google it. It's not like something that you can find somewhere else. And I just took information that I found online and packaged it into the course. Like, we're really doing something new here that I've been working with for 5 years plus, and I can see the benefit. And I think it takes really the best of both worlds from both kinds of therapy. So we have deeper psychodynamic therapy, which gets to fundamental issues, but it's vague. Then there's the cognitive behavioral approach, popularly mindset approach, which is precise and clear, right? It'll tell you exactly what to do, but it's shallow, right? It doesn't touch on fundamental issues here. And really what we're doing here is showing you how to process emotional issues in a fundamental way while being unbelievably clear and precise about it. So we're really combining the best of both worlds. We do free consultations. If you have any questions or just want to ask what would be the next right step for you, we do free consultations, animusempire.com/schedule. Thank you guys. I will leave it there. And also remember that there definitely is a place for mindset training, but it's always going to be on the other side of deep, painful work.